Joining me now, senior writer at Sports Illustrated, Chris Mannix. Chris, got a lot to cover with you today. Let's start with the teams that got better after the trade deadline, the best teams in the league, specifically the Lakers and the Nets. What do you expect Andre Drummond's impact to be in LA?
Well, I think Drummond's impact will be significant. The Lakers, while they have the number one defense in the NBA, have been missing an element of toughness since they let Dwight Howard walk at the end of last season. They've got Marc Gasol, who has brought some positive things to that team. Montrezl Harrell has been excellent as the first big off the bench, but they have missed a little bit of physicality there. Andre Drummond brings that physicality. He's 27 years old. He's arguably the best rebounder in the NBA, and one of the best rebounders of this generation. And he's going to step in and immediately be able to do a lot of the dirty work that we saw Dwight Howard do just last season. So I think Drummond is going to have a major impact on the Lakers the rest of this season and into the playoffs.
All things considered, was LA smart not to go all in on Kyle Lowry?
I think they were. There's no question that Kyle Lowry would have been an upgrade, but I'm not sure how measurable it would have been, and the price would have been pretty high. The Lakers, by virtue of the trades they've made the last couple of years, are fairly devoid of young talent and of future draft picks that they've had to move away. Talen Horton-Tucker is an excellent young player, a guard who I believe is going to have a bright future in this league for years to come. In order to make a Kyle Lowry deal happen, they would have had to deal Horton-Tucker. That just wasn't something the Lakers could stomach. And at the end of the day, the Lakers know that, when LeBron comes back, when Anthony Davis comes back, regardless of seeding, they are probably going to be the favorite to at least win the Western Conference. So the long-term price of losing your best young player, that was just too rich for the Lakers' blood, and I personally think they made the right decision.
The moves made by LA and Brooklyn have a lot of people up in arms. This conversation that we always hear about, not enough parity in the league, and now these rosters are stacked. Steve Nash essentially said, it's not my fault. I didn't do anything wrong. What's the solution here? Does there need to be a solution?
Well, you talk to different teams around the league, they have different ideas because, of course, the buyout deadline is effectively an opportunity for top contending teams to get players for free. I mean, Andre Drummond said he chose the Lakers because it gave him the best chance to win. LaMarcus Aldridge probably chose Brooklyn because it gave him the best chance to win. So you don't blame players for doing it. What may be a solution here is to limit the number of years that a team can acquire a player on the buyout market. Say you have, one exception per 3 years to sign a bought out player. That would, at least theoretically, reduce the opportunities for a team to get a player the caliber of Drummond or Aldridge on the market. Because look, there's no doubt, despite all the moves that were made at the trade deadline with Miami and Denver and Portland, the Lakers and the Nets, without having to deal away any assets, were able to pluck, productive players who will be a big part of their rotations going forward. So I think there are some tweaks the NBA can and should consider in the coming years to make it less accessible for teams to get frontline players on the cheap after the trade deadline.
So now when you look at the way that the Lakers and Nets are constituted, and you think about LeBron James when he's back from injury, is he still better than everything that the Nets have done cumulatively as we continue to move forward in the second half of the season and ultimately look towards the playoffs?
Look, I think we're going to find out. I mean, I think the Lakers, as long as they're healthy come mid-May, and the Nets are going to be the two favorites to come out of their respective conferences. Look, LeBron is a supernatural talent, and Anthony Davis, when he's healthy, is right there along with him. But what the Nets have done this year they've given themselves three players who you can make an argument has played like an MVP at different points of this season. James Harden is right in the middle of the MVP race right now. He has been excellent for the Nets since coming over from Houston in mid-January. Before his hamstring injury, Kevin Durant was one of the front runners for MVP. Kyrie Irving is having one of his best offensive seasons, and he's had a lot of them with Brooklyn. Playoff games oftentimes come down to fourth quarter performers, and the Nets have three guys that can just kill you in the fourth quarter. The Lakers have one definitely, 2 probably. And after that, you're kind of wondering who's going to be the guy that's going to step up. So I just think Brooklyn has an edge given how much firepower they have from those 3 key guys.
As of this taping, the Knicks and the Hornets have a better record in the East than the Boston Celtics. I know you're a Boston guy, and they are seemingly in a free fall. What is the fix here? What is going on?
Well, the Celtics are certainly hoping that the addition of Evan Fournier is going to give them a boost. Fournier did not play well in his Celtics debut, but he is a close to 20-point-per-game scorer who will immediately step in and be Boston's 4th or 5th best player. And they effectively got him for nothing, which is a big part of all this. The Celtics' decline, it doesn't just get traced back to the start of this season. This is a multi-year process where they have had far too much talent go out that has actually come in. They lose Al Horford a couple of years ago. They get nothing back in return. They lose Gordon Hayward last offseason. They get nothing back in return. So you can't lose that level of talent and not replace it while simultaneously not having your young players show the kind of skills that allow them to step into those roles that were recently vacated. So I think the Celtics, even with the addition of Fournier, are going to be on the tier below teams like Brooklyn, Philadelphia, Milwaukee, even Miami, and they'll continue to be until they can keep adding talent without losing talent in return.
You know that market. It's one of the best sports markets in the country, and championships are expected. How much of the fault lies with Danny Ainge in this, and is he still the one that should be running this and making these decisions?
Well, look, Danny Ainge deserves criticism like any other top executive when their team falters. And you can look back at this last offseason and wonder, could the Celtics have done a sign and trade involving Gordon Hayward in Indiana that would have brought back Miles Turner and Doug McDermott, 2 players that were made available by the Pacers? The Celtics ultimately decided that the trade exception that they acquired was more valuable to them than that kind of deal. So, Danny Ainge is responsible for that. All that being said, in the first decade of the 2000s, he made the deal that acquired Kevin Garnett and Ray Allen and brought the Celtics to championship. In the second decade, he made the deal that, broke apart that team and got back the assets that turned into Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. This has been an incredibly disappointing season for the Celtics so far, but I don't think you fire one of the most successful general managers in basketball right now based on the result of 1 or 2 seasons.
How much leash does he get?
I would say probably several more years, at least with this point. Look, the big thing with the Celtics is they've got to draft better. They've had all these draft picks, but not too many of them have turned out to be highly productive players. And of course, Tatum and Brown have been excellent. Robert Williams is turning into a terrific player with this team this year. He has been a real shining light for this group. But you look at Romeo Langford, who has been MIA all season for various reasons. You look at Aaron Nesmith, who has not been as productive during his rookie season as I think the Celtics might have liked. There have been some misses, with this group. But in the NBA, you can't have misses. It's not rocket science putting together a great team. The reason Miami's in the position they're in right now is because in the middle of the first round, they drafted Tyler Hero. They drafted Bam Adebayo. They got Duncan Robinson as an undrafted free agent. I mean, they were able to identify talent that wasn't obvious. And when you're able to do that, you put yourself in the best position to win.
Before I let you go, I want to ask you about Utah. Are they the real deal in your opinion?
Well, the Jazz are probably going to go into the playoffs as the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. And they have tremendous depth, right? Like their starting lineup is excellent. Rudy Gobert is having his best 2-way season, a legit candidate for MVP. Mike Conley was an all-star this year for the first time in his career. It has completely washed away some of the missteps he had in his first year with Utah, while Jordan Clarkson is the front runner, I would say, for 6th man of the year. But the Jazz, what it comes down to for Utah, I think, is can Donovan Mitchell take over games in the fourth quarter? We've seen him do it at times during the season. We haven't seen him do it too many times against the top teams in the Western Conference. Ultimately, as I talked about with Brooklyn, what it comes down to in the NBA is having guys take over games individually in the fourth quarter when the game slows down and everything becomes isolation basketball. Donovan Mitchell is effectively the only player on that Jazz team that can do that. So if Mitchell is ready for that type of challenge, the Jazz have all the pieces, offensively and defensively, to win the Western Conference. If he's not up for the task this year, then Utah could be in for a very rude awakening very early in the postseason.
Chris Mannix of Sports Illustrated. We appreciate it.
You got it.